On Thanksgiving, my parents humiliated me at the table. My sister Brooke got a $13,000 cruise. I got a wrinkled $2 lottery ticket and a smirk. Everyone laughed, and then my mom said, "That's all you're worth. What would you do if it hit $100 million?" And they begged me. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened because people love to say favoritism like it's a cute little family quirk, like it's someone getting the bigger slice of pie, not a slow, deliberate way of teaching you you're the extra chair nobody wants to set up. I'm Lila Carson. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and 2 months ago on Thanksgiving night, my parents did the thing they'd been practicing for years. They just finally did it with an audience, and you could hear the performance in their voices. The way my mom stretched certain words like she was reading stage directions. The way my dad smiled like a man who enjoys a punchline even when his own child is the joke. And I walked into that house at 5 o'clock with a homemade autumn salad in a glass bowl I've had since college, and a bouquet of deep burgundy dahlias I grew myself, because yes, I still grow things with my hands, and yes, my mother still acts like that's a character flaw. And the second she opened the door, her eyes went straight to the flowers and then away like the color offended her, and she said, "Oh, Lila, still playing with dirt, huh?" And she didn't even mean it as a joke. She meant it like a verdict, like she was diagnosing me with a condition called not impressive enough. And before I could step fully inside, I heard this high squeal from the living room, and I knew Brooke had arrived because my sister doesn't enter a room. She announces herself like a brand. And my mom literally brushed past me to throw her arms around Brooke like they'd been separated by war. And Brooke was glowing in this. A cream sweater dress that probably cost more than my car payment. And my mom did that thing where she cups her cheeks like Brooke is still 8 years old, and she goes, "There's my girl. Oh my goodness, you're stunning." And my dad didn't even get up from his leather recliner. He just nodded toward the dining room and said, "Lila, good. You're here. We need help setting the table." And that's the Carson family in one sentence. Brooke arrives and gets worship. I arrive and get assigned chores. Like I'm staff. The house was packed. Aunts and uncles and cousins I only recognize in the way you recognize furniture you grew up with. Familiar shapes, not necessarily warmth. And in the center of it all was Brooke's husband Trent holding court on the couch, telling a story about a deal, the way men like him do. Every sentence implying money without stating numbers. Because in my family, money is religion and Trent is the preacher, and people leaned in like he was revealing scripture. And I was in the dining room alone, laying out napkins and hearing laughter ripple through the walls like a reminder that my seat at the table was conditional. And I'm not saying that for pity. I'm saying it because if you've ever felt that, you know how it makes your body go quiet, like you're trying not to take up oxygen. My Aunt Denise caught my eye from the hallway at one point and gave me this small, sad smile that said she's seen this movie before. And it made me angry, because I don't want sympathy from the sidelines. I want someone to stand up in the middle of the room and say, "Why do you treat her like that?" But families like mine don't do confrontation. They do slow cruelty with polite voices. At one point, my mom introduced me to a distant cousin like I was a hobby she couldn't quite remember. She said, "This is Lila, my younger daughter. She just plants something with gardens," and I corrected her softly. "I design green spaces for commercial buildings," and she waved her hand like swatting a fly. "Same thing, honey," and I swallowed it because I've learned arguing with my mother is like trying to teach a mirror to apologize. It only reflects what it wants. And then the kitchen door was cracked open, and I heard the hush, that conspiratorial tone that tells you people are making decisions about you without you, and my mom was saying, "The cruise leaves December 15th, 2 weeks in the Caribbean, first class, the whole family," and my hand froze on the water. Picture, because the words "whole family" were always slippery in my house, and Brooke asked, not concerned, just performing a checkbox, "What about Lila?" And there was silence long enough to count. And my dad cleared his throat like he was smoothing a wrinkle in a suit and said, "She's busy with work, and a trip like that is expensive." We don't want to burden her. And I swear to you, the way he said burden made it sound like I was the bill, not the daughter. And I pushed the door open and they all turned like 3 actors caught mid-rehearsal. And I said, "So, I'm not invited." And my mom's smile tightened, that plastic smile she uses when she's about to be reasonable. And she went, "Sweetheart, this trip is to celebrate Trent's promotion. It's more of a family thing." And Brooke added, "You're so independent, you wouldn't even enjoy it." And there it was, that word, independent. The word family's use when they want to make your loneliness feel like your personality instead of their decision. And right when I was about to speak, my grandmother June appeared in the hallway, leaning on her walker, small but sharp-eyed, the kind of old woman who has survived too much to be fooled by smiles. And she reached out and squeezed my hand. Didn't say a word, just a squeeze that felt like the only honest thing in that kitchen. And then, as my mom guided her away with that "you need to sit down" tone, Grandma June looked back at me and mouthed something I didn't understand at first, and I only caught it because I've spent my whole life reading my family's silent messages. Her lips said, "Call Thomas Reed." And my chest tightened because why would my grandmother tell me to call a lawyer on Thanksgiving? And why did she look like she was passing me a secret like contraband? Now pause for half a second because I need to know something and then we keep going. Where are you watching from right now? What state? What city? And what time is it there? Because I swear, stories like this hit different when you realize people all over the country are living in the same kind of quiet betrayal. So drop your location in the comments and tell me, have you ever been treated like the help in your own family? Okay, back to that dining room, because this is where my parents went from subtle to bold. My dad stood up and tapped his wine glass with a fork like he was about to make a toast at a wedding. And he smiled that salesman smile, the one that says, "Trust me while his hands are already in your pocket." And he said, "Family is everything." And I watched 30 heads nod like trained birds. And then he said, "This year, Patricia and I wanted to do something special for our daughters." And he gestured at Brooke first. Always Brooke first. And my mom handed her a thick envelope like she was presenting an award. And my dad announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, a 14-day Caribbean cruise, first class. And the room erupted in gasps and applause, and Brooke did those pretty tears that make people rush to comfort her like she's a heroine. And she kept saying, "Oh my God, thank you, shouldn't have," while already mentally packing. And then my mom turned to me, and the sound dropped out of the room like someone pulled a plug, and she said, "Lila, honey, come here." And I walked forward, and every step felt like walking into a spotlight I never asked for. And she pressed a thin envelope into my hand, and inside was a single Mega Millions ticket, crumpled like it had been in someone's pocket with lint and disrespect. And my mom smiled with her mouth only and said, "This is all that's appropriate for your situation." And she didn't even lower her voice. She wanted the room to hear it, wanted witnesses, wanted my humiliation to be shared property. And someone snickered, and then Trent leaned back and said, "Luck's a long shot when you don't have brains to back it up." And that line got a laugh like it was a sitcom, and Brooke covered her mouth, giggling. Maybe she'll win $5. And I stared at that stupid ticket and felt my face get hot. But deeper than embarrassment, something cracked, something old and tired and obedient finally snapped. Because here's the truth nobody says out loud. Disrespect from strangers hurts. Disrespect from parents rewires you. It teaches your nervous system that love is a trapdoor, and the moment you relax, it drops. And I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. Not the polite smile, a calm smile. And I said, "Thank you, Mom. I'm sure this will be exactly what I deserve." And my mom's eyes narrowed because she heard the edge even if nobody else did. And then Grandma June's thin voice cut through from the hallway. "Gerald, Patricia, this is not right." And the room went stiff, and my dad's jaw tightened like he hated that she had a conscience in public. And my mom moved fast, wrapping Grandma June up and steering her away with that fake concern. "You're tired, Mom. You need rest." And Grandma June looked back at me one more time, and her gaze flicked too. Her leather handbag on the chair by the window, the one nobody touches, the one she keeps close like it's a vault, and then the guest room door shut and the room exhaled like the thread of truth had been removed. Later, near midnight, when everyone was in that post-dinner haze and I was doing what I always do, cleaning while the golden child plans vacations, I went into my dad's study to grab dishes, and his desk was a mess, paper scattered like he'd left in a hurry, and I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm also not ashamed, because survival makes you observant. I glanced down and saw overdue bills with red stamps, a collection letter, and then a loan agreement with a signature that made my stomach drop, my dad's name, and Trent's name as co-signer, $180,000, with an interest rate so nasty it looked like a threat, and under it were collateral documents tied to Grandma June's house, her signature dated from the month she fell and was hospitalized on heavy meds, and the ink looked shaky like someone had guided her hand. And in that moment, my entire childhood rearranged itself in my head like a puzzle finally snapping into place. The favoritism, the way Brooke was protected, the way I was kept busy and small and independent, because I wasn't a spare child. I was the risk. I was the one who asks, who notices, who doesn't clap on command. And I felt my hands start to shake, and I took my phone out, and I photographed every page, every corner, every signature, because paper is what people like my parents believe in, and paper is also what buries them. I slipped that lottery ticket into my pocket like a joke the universe hadn't finished telling yet, and I walked out the back door into the cold night air with my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape. And I didn't go back inside. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't give them the satisfaction of one last helpful task. I drove home with the heater blasting and my thoughts loud, and I laid that crumpled ticket on my kitchen counter next to my keys like it was evidence, not hope, because I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking about what Grandma June meant when she said call Thomas Reed, and I was thinking about one ugly question that started chewing through my brain. If my parents are desperate enough to put Grandma's house up as collateral behind her back, what else have they lied about? And how far are they willing to go to keep me quiet? Because I promise you, the next move they made wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a threat at first. It was something slicker, something that would have trapped me if I wasn't already wide awake. And it started with one phone call that made my stomach turn before I even answered it. I got home, and I didn't do the dramatic thing people expect in movies like throwing plates or sobbing on the kitchen floor. I did the quiet thing real people do when their brain goes into emergency mode. I washed my hands like I could wash the feeling off. I set my purse down. I put that crumpled lottery ticket on the counter like it was radioactive. And then I opened my phone gallery and stared at the photos I'd taken of my dad's desk, zooming in until the signatures filled the screen, because seeing your father's name next to a predatory loan is like realizing the man who lectured you about responsibility has been gambling with someone else's life. My mind kept replaying Grandma June's mouth forming those words, call Thomas Reed, and it wasn't just advice, it was urgency. Like, she knew I'd finally stumbled into the room where the truth was kept, and she needed me to move before they cleaned it up. I didn't sleep. Not really. I did that half sleep where your eyes close but your body stays alert like it's guarding something. And at 6:12 a.m. my phone rang and the screen lit up with my mother's name. And I swear my stomach tightened before my finger even touched the button, because when your mother calls early, it's never to ask how you are, it's to manage the story. I answered and kept my voice neutral, and she came in sweet, too sweet, like syrup poured over a rotten apple. Good morning, Lila, honey, are you up? And I said, I am. And she gave a little laugh like she was embarrassed for me. I just wanted to make sure you didn't take last night the wrong way. And listen to that. Take it the wrong way. Like humiliation is a misunderstanding. Like she accidentally tripped and her words fell into my face. I said nothing, and my silence made her shift tactics, because my mother has two modes, charming and punishing, and she hates when you don't pick one for her, so she continued. Your sister needs support right now. Trent has a lot on his plate, and we're trying to keep the family together. You understand that, right? And I almost laughed because she said keep the family together after publicly separating me from it in front of 30 people, and then she added, softer, the hook. Also, Daddy said you were in his study last night helping clean up. Did you happen to move any papers? And there it was, the real reason for the call, not my feelings, not my dignity, the papers. I felt my pulse in my throat, and I kept my voice calm. Why would I move? Papers? And she said too quickly, oh, nothing, just your father has work documents, boring stuff. You know how you get curious. You know how you get curious, like curiosity is my crime. And then she tried to laugh again, and it came out sharp. Anyway, we're going to have a small family dinner next week before the cruise, and it would be nice if you came and didn't make things awkward. And she kept saying, oh my God, thank you, shouldn't have, while already mentally packing. And then my mom turned to me, and the sound dropped out of the room like someone pulled a plug, and she said, Lila, honey, come here. And I walked forward, and every step felt like walking into a spotlight I never asked for, and she pressed a thin envelope into my hand, and inside was a single Mega Millions ticket, crumpled like it had been in someone's pocket with lint and disrespect, and my mom smiled with her mouth only and said, this is all that's appropriate for your situation. And she didn't even lower her voice. She wanted the room to hear it, wanted witnesses, wanted my humiliation to be shared property, and someone snickered, and then Trent leaned back and said, luck's a long shot when you don't have brains to back it up. And that line got a laugh like it was a sitcom, and Brooke covered her mouth, giggling. Maybe she'll win $5. And I stared at that stupid ticket and felt my face get hot, but deeper than embarrassment, something cracked, something old and tired and obedient finally snapped, because here's the truth nobody says out loud. Disrespect from strangers hurts. Disrespect from parents rewires you. It teaches your nervous system that love is a trapdoor, and the moment you relax, it drops. And I did something that surprised even me. I smiled, not the polite smile, a calm smile, and I said, thank you, Mom. I'm sure this will be exactly what I deserve. And my mom's eyes narrowed because she heard the edge even if nobody else did. And then Grandma June's thin voice cut through from the hallway. Gerald, Patricia, this is not right. And the room went stiff, and my dad's jaw tightened like he hated that she had a conscience in public, and my mom moved fast, wrapping Grandma June up and steering her away with that fake concern. You're tired, Mom. You need rest. And Grandma June looked back at me one more time, and her gaze flicked too. Her leather handbag on the chair by the window, the one nobody touches, the one she keeps close like it's a vault, and then the guest room door shut, and the room exhaled like the thread of truth had been removed. Later, near midnight, when everyone was in that post-dinner haze and I was doing what I always do, cleaning while the golden child plans vacations, I went into my dad's study to grab dishes, and his desk was a mess, papers scattered like he'd left in a hurry, and I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm also not ashamed, because survival makes you observant. I glanced down and saw overdue bills with red stamps, a collection letter, and then a loan agreement with a signature that made my stomach drop, my dad's name, and Trent's name as co-signer, $180,000, with an interest rate so nasty it looked like a threat, and under it were collateral documents tied to Grandma June's house, her signature dated from the month she fell and was hospitalized on heavy meds, and the ink looked shaky like someone had guided her hand. And in that moment, my entire childhood rearranged itself in my head like a puzzle finally snapping into place. The favoritism, the way Brooke was protected, the way I was kept busy and small and independent, because I wasn't a spare child. I was the risk. I was the one who asks, who notices, who doesn't clap on command. And I felt my hands start to shake, and I took my phone out, and I photographed every page, every corner, every signature, because paper is what people like my parents believe in, and paper is also what buries them. I slipped that lottery ticket into my pocket like a joke the universe hadn't finished telling yet, and I walked out the back door into the cold night air with my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape. And I didn't go back inside. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't give them the satisfaction of one last helpful task. I drove home with the heater blasting and my thoughts loud, and I laid that crumpled ticket on my kitchen counter next to my keys like it was evidence, not hope, because I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking about what Grandma June meant when she said call Thomas Reed, and I was thinking about one ugly question that started chewing through my brain. If my parents are desperate enough to put Grandma's house up as collateral behind her back, what else have they lied about? And how far are they willing to go to keep me quiet? Because I promise you, the next move they made wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a threat at first. It was something slicker, something that would have trapped me if I wasn't already wide awake. And it started with one phone call that made my stomach turn before I even answered it. I got home, and I didn't do the dramatic thing people expect in movies like throwing plates or sobbing on the kitchen floor. I did the quiet thing real people do when their brain goes into emergency mode. I washed my hands like I could wash the feeling off. I set my purse down. I put that crumpled lottery ticket on the counter like it was radioactive. And then I opened my phone gallery and stared at the photos I'd taken of my dad's desk, zooming in until the signatures filled the screen, because seeing your father's name next to a predatory loan is like realizing the man who lectured you about responsibility has been gambling with someone else's life. My mind kept replaying Grandma June's mouth forming those words, call Thomas Reed, and it wasn't just advice, it was urgency. Like, she knew I'd finally stumbled into the room where the truth was kept, and she needed me to move before they cleaned it up. I didn't sleep, not really. I did that half sleep where your eyes close but your body stays alert like it's guarding something. And at 6:12 a.m. my phone rang and the screen lit up with my mother's name. And I swear my stomach tightened before my finger even touched the button, because when your mother calls early, it's never to ask how you are, it's to manage the story. I answered and kept my voice neutral, and she came in sweet, too sweet, like syrup poured over a rotten apple. Good morning, Lila, honey, are you up? And I said, I am. And she gave a little laugh like she was embarrassed for me. I just wanted to make sure you didn't take last night the wrong way. And listen to that. Take it the wrong way. Like humiliation is a misunderstanding. Like she accidentally tripped and her words fell into my face. I said nothing, and my silence made her shift tactics, because my mother has two modes, charming and punishing, and she hates when you don't pick one for her, so she continued. Your sister needs support right now. Trent has a lot on his plate, and we're trying to keep the family together. You understand that, right? And I almost laughed because she said keep the family together after publicly separating me from it in front of 30 people, and then she added softer, the hook. Also, Daddy said you were in his study last night helping clean up. Did you happen to move any papers? And there it was, the real reason for the call, not my feelings, not my dignity, the papers. I felt my pulse in my throat, and I kept my voice calm. Why would I move? Papers? And she said too quickly, oh, nothing, just your father has work documents, boring stuff. You know how you get curious. You know how you get curious, like curiosity is my crime. And then she tried to laugh again, and it came out sharp. Anyway, we're going to have a small family dinner next week before the cruise, and it would be nice if you came and didn't make things awkward. Didn't make things awkward. Translation. Don't mention the ticket. Don't mention the insult. Don't mention what you saw. Swallow it like you always do. I said, I'll think about it. And she paused and her voice cooled. You do that. And she hung up like she'd just closed a file. Now tell me, if your mother called you the morning after humiliating you, would you believe she suddenly grew a conscience? Or would you hear the same thing I heard? The panic underneath the perfume, because I heard panic, and I knew it meant the documents mattered. And if they mattered, my next move had to be smarter than my emotions. I didn't call Thomas Reed yet. Not because I forgot, because I wanted to control the timeline, and my brain went to one person who's always hovering near truth without ever touching it. Aunt Denise, the aunt with a sad smile, the aunt who watches cruelty like it's weather. And I called her at 8:03 a.m., and she answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. "Lila," she said, and her voice already sounded tired, and I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." And she went quiet, that careful quiet where you can hear someone deciding whether to protect you or protect the family's lie. And I asked, "Is Dad in serious debt?" And her breath caught, just a small sound, but it told me everything, and she whispered, "Where are you?" Like my location mattered for safety, and I said, "In my kitchen." And she said, "Not on the phone, baby." And I felt anger rise, because why do we treat truth like it's the dangerous thing, not the fraud? And I said, "Denise, I saw papers last night alone. Trent's name, Grandma's house." And she didn't deny it. She just said, "Oh Lord," like a prayer and a warning at the same time. And then she said, "Meet me Saturday at the coffee shop on Elm Street, 2 o'clock, and Lila, don't let your mother know you called me." And before I could ask why, she added, "And do not trust Trent." And she hung up fast, like she'd said too much and was afraid her own phone would punish her. After that call, I stared at the lottery ticket again, and I want you to understand this part, because people act like checking numbers is some fun little moment like scratching a card at a gas station, but when you've been demeaned by your own family, that ticket isn't hope, it's a symbol of how they see you. And I felt this weird impulse, not to prove them wrong, but to close the loop, like my body needed to know whether the universe was just as cruel as my mother. So I opened the Mega Millions site. I typed the numbers in slowly, triple-checking like a paranoid accountant, and the page loaded and the first number matched, and my brain went, okay, coincidence, and then the second matched, and my chest tightened, and then the third, and I stopped breathing. And by the time the last number matched, I felt my whole body go cold, not excited, cold. Because that kind of money doesn't feel like joy first, it feels like danger. It feels like a door unlocking in a house full of people who will run toward it. I refreshed, I checked the official site, I checked again because I did not trust my own eyes, and when the same result stared back at me, jackpot, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I sat down on the floor with my back against the cabinet because my knees stopped cooperating, and I stared at that stupid crumpled ticket like it had teeth. And then my first thought wasn't I'm rich. It was, if they find out, they will eat me alive. Because I know my family, I know the way my mom's eyes change when she wants something. I know my dad's soft voice when he's about to justify a sin. I know Brooke's performative sweetness that turns sharp the second she feels threatened. And I know Trent's predator calm. So I did what every sensible person does when they suddenly hold a life-altering secret. I Googled what to do if you win the lottery. And every single result screamed the same thing in different fonts. Don't tell anyone, get a lawyer, protect yourself. And I felt my grandmother's message click into place like a lock turning. Call Thomas Reed. I called him that afternoon, and his assistant put me through like he'd been expecting it, and his voice was warm but precise. "Miss Carson." And I said, "My grandmother June told me to call you." And he didn't even sound surprised. He just said, "Yes, she said you might." And then he paused and asked, careful, "Did you win something?" And I said it, quietly, because saying it out loud felt like summoning a storm, 100 million. And there was a beat of silence, not disbelief, calculation, and then he said, "Okay, we handle this calmly. You don't tell your parents, you don't tell your sister, you don't tell anyone. You come to my office tomorrow morning and you bring the ticket and your ID." And then he lowered his voice. "And Miss Carson, what your grandmother wanted to discuss existed before the ticket. It's about her house." And my stomach dropped again because the money was huge, but the house was the heart of it, the proof of betrayal. And I said, "I saw papers." And he said, "I know." And that word "I know" hit me like a wave because it meant my grandmother wasn't paranoid. She was preparing. She was trying to get ahead of something. And then he added, "Do not confront anyone yet. You'll tip them off. People destroy evidence when they feel threatened." And tell me, if a lawyer says that to you, what does it tell you about the people you share blood with? I spent the next 2 days walking around like a person wearing a mask of normalcy, going to work, answering emails, smiling at colleagues, while my phone buzzed with my mom's messages like nothing happened, little fake-friendly texts. Hope you're having a good day. Don't forget family dinner next week. And every time the screen lit up, I felt a flash of disgust because now I could hear the subtext. She wasn't reaching out. She was checking my temperature, making sure I stayed docile. Then Friday night, Brooke texted me a selfie from a boutique. Look what I found for the cruise. And she looked radiant, and the old part of me wanted to hate her, but the newer part of me saw something else. My sister wasn't just spoiled. She was being used like a shield, because if Trent was tied to my dad's debt and my grandmother's house, Brooke wasn't the winner in this family. She was the cover story, and I sat there staring at her smile thinking, does she even know what she married? And that question stayed with me as I went to bed, because the next day at the coffee shop, Aunt Denise was going to tell me what she'd been too afraid to say on the phone, and I already had a feeling the truth was going to be uglier than the loan. Uglier than the house, uglier than the lottery ticket joke, because the way she said, "Don't trust Trent," sounded less like gossip and more like survival advice. And once you hear survival advice about your own brother-in-law, you don't unhear it. Saturday at 1:57 p.m. I pulled into the Elm Street coffee shop parking lot and sat there gripping my steering wheel like it was keeping me anchored to earth. Because it's one thing to suspect your family is messy, and it's another thing to walk into a public place to hear the truth spoken out loud where you can't pretend you misheard it later. Inside, the shop smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon syrup, the kind of place that tries to feel cozy while everybody inside is quietly having their own crisis. And Aunt Denise was already in the back corner booth, not sipping her drink, just holding the paper cup like she needed something to do with her hands, and the second she saw me, she didn't wave. She didn't smile. She did that small, tight nod that says, "This is serious. Sit down." I slid into the booth and didn't even take my coat off. I just leaned in and said, "Tell me what you know." And she flinched like the directness hurt her teeth. Then she glanced around the room like my mother might pop out from behind the muffin case, and she whispered, "Before I say anything, I need you to promise me you won't confront them today." And I said, "I'm not here for a screaming match. I'm here for the facts." And she exhaled like she'd been holding that breath since Thanksgiving. She started with my dad, because of course it starts with a man who always acted like he was the family's moral compass. "Your father's been in trouble for years," she said. And I kept my face still even though my stomach twisted. Not just the usual credit card juggling. I mean real trouble. Loans stacked on loans. And your mother's been covering it up like it's her full-time job. And I said, "Why?" And she gave me the most exhausted look and said, "Because your mother doesn't love peace. She loves appearances." And that line hit hard because it explained everything. The dinner theatrics, the public gifts, the way she weaponizes holidays like their press conferences. Then Denise's voice dropped even lower. "And Trent, Lila, Trent is not a financial consultant." And the way she said it made my skin prickle. "He's a lender, the kind that smiles at you while he tightens a rope. He finds people when they're desperate, and he makes the paperwork look clean enough to pass a casual glance. But the interest rates are brutal, and the collateral is always something sentimental." And I swallowed because I could see it now. I could see the way Trent watches a room like he's cataloging weaknesses. Denise pulled out her phone and didn't slide it to me yet. She held it close like a confession. 2 months ago at your parents' anniversary party, Trent left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, and I wasn't snooping. I was looking for my own phone, and then I saw messages pop up, and once you see something like that, you can't pretend you didn't. And she finally turned the screen toward me, and there it was, a thread with a contact name saved as D, with a heart emoji, grown man behavior, and the messages weren't flirty. They were cold, transactional, and one line was like a nail to the chest. "Can't wait until this is done. Once the house deal closes, I'm out." Another line right under it, she served her purpose. "Divorce papers are drafted." I felt my face go numb because suddenly the cruise wasn't a gift. It was a curtain. something shiny to distract the family while Trent and my dad quietly moved money and property behind the scenes. Brooke doesn't know, Denise whispered, and her eyes watered, which surprised me because my aunt is the type who usually holds emotion back like it's expensive, or if she knows something is wrong, she's in denial. Because your sister has been trained to believe that if she performs perfect hard enough, nothing bad can touch her. And I sat back, staring at the messages, thinking about Brooke's selfie from the boutique, her bright smile, and how people can be both favored and fooled at the same time. I said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" And Denise winced like I'd slapped her. "Because your mother makes this family punish truth-tellers," she said. "You've been the scapegoat, Lila. But I've watched what she does to anyone who challenges her narrative. She freezes you out, turns people against you, makes you feel crazy for noticing what you noticed." And she was right, and that made me angrier than the messages, because it meant this wasn't a series of accidents, it was a system. I leaned forward, voice low. "What about Grandma June's house?" And Denise's eyes flicked to mine like she wished I hadn't said it out loud. "She didn't sign it over because she wanted to," Denise said. "She signed papers while she was medicated, and your mother signed as a witness, and your father signed like it was just business." And my stomach rolled because I could picture my grandmother in that foggy hospital light, groggy, trusting, and my mother standing over her with that practiced, helpful voice, guiding her hand like she was doing her a favor. I pushed the phone back across the table and said, "I have pictures of the loan agreement." And Denise's eyebrows shot up. "How?" And I said, "Dad left papers on his desk. I photographed everything." And she let out a shaky breath, like she was both relieved and terrified. "Good," she whispered, "because they've been sloppy lately. And when sloppy people get scared, they get dangerous." And right there, in a coffee shop with soft music playing and someone laughing at the register like the world was normal, I felt the story shift from family drama to something sharper, something that could break lives. I left the coffee shop with my thoughts sprinting, and before I even got to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Perfect timing, honey. We're all together right now. Quick question. Do you still have that lottery ticket?" And my chest tightened because it was like she could smell the possibility on me, like she'd sensed the universe had moved a piece on the board. I didn't answer in the parking lot. I drove home with my jaw clenched, so hard my teeth hurt, and I kept replaying her wording. "Not do you want to come for dinner? Not how are you after last night, but do you still have the ticket?" Because that ticket was never about me. It was about controlling the story, and the second the story might pay out, she wanted her hands on it. I got home and didn't go straight inside. I stood on my porch and stared at my front door like I was deciding which version of my life I was walking back into. The old one where I swallowed everything, or the new one where I moved like a person who understood leverage. Once inside, I pulled the ticket from the envelope Thomas Reed told me to store it in, and I put it in a small lockbox I bought that morning. Then I sat at my kitchen table and called Thomas Reed's office, and when he answered, he didn't say hello like a casual person. He said it like a man stepping into a storm with an umbrella already open. "Miss Carson." And I said, "I met with my aunt, and she confirmed Trent is cheating and that the house papers were signed while Grandma was medicated." And Thomas didn't gasp. He didn't act shocked. He just said, "That's consistent with what your grandmother feared." And then he gave me instructions like he was reading a checklist that saves people's lives. "Do not respond to your mother's texts. Do not mention the ticket. Do not confront Trent. Bring the ticket and your photos to my office Monday. We will form an LLC and a trust strategy so your name stays off public filings, and we will begin the process to challenge the deed transfer with medical records, timestamps, and witness statements." I asked, "Can we stop them before the cruise?" And he paused, then said, "We can't stop them from leaving, but we can make sure they don't come home to the same control they left with." And that line lit a fuse in me, because I realized something. Their cruise wasn't my punishment. It was my window. 2 weeks where they'd be distracted, trapped in the middle of the ocean. thinking they'd won. While I quietly locked down every door they used to access me, my mother texted again that night, "Hey sweetheart, just checking in, you haven't answered," and then another message, "We're family, you can tell me anything," and I almost laughed because that's what manipulators say when they sense you've stopped sharing. Family is their favorite weapon word, like it's a magic wand that erases what they did yesterday. I stared at the messages and didn't reply, and instead I opened my photo gallery and went through the loan documents again, page by page, forcing myself to notice every detail, every number, every date, because this wasn't about feelings anymore, it was about evidence, and the more I looked, the more I saw little clues that made my skin crawl. Multiple missed payment notices, a letter from a collections agency, a schedule of payments with amounts that didn't line up with what my dad could realistically afford, and Trent's signature sitting there like a smug stamp. And right when I thought I'd seen the worst, I zoomed in on a page I hadn't studied closely, and my throat went dry, because there was a clause that mentioned an additional guarantor tied to the collateral, and the name typed there wasn't my mother, wasn't my sister, it was mine, Lila Carson, listed as a related party, like they'd already been building a path to pull me into the debt if anything went wrong. I sat back so fast the chair legs scraped the floor, and my brain started doing that cold, efficient thing again, because now I understood the real reason they kept me low value in public, the reason they humiliated me with the lottery ticket, the reason they made me feel like I was lucky to be tolerated. It wasn't just cruelty, it was strategy. You keep the person you might need later in a position where they're constantly trying to earn their place, and then when the trap springs, they step into it willingly because they think it's finally their chance to be useful. I stared at my own name on that clause and felt my hands tremble, not from fear of losing money, but from realizing how far they were willing to go, and I whispered out loud to my empty kitchen, "Oh, this is what you were doing." And in that moment, I didn't feel like the ignored daughter anymore. I felt like the one person who could blow the whole thing up, and the scariest part was I could already tell my mother had started to suspect it, because my phone buzzed again with a new message, this time from Trent himself. "Hey Lila, heard you still have that ticket. Mind sending me a pic of it? Just curious." And I stared at his text, and then I looked at the documents again, and I realized the next move wasn't going to be about money at all. It was going to be about control, because if Trent was bold enough to ask for a picture, it meant he was already reaching for the ticket like it belonged to him, and that meant he was also ready to play dirty the second he believed I had something he could take. I didn't answer Trent's text, not because I was scared, but because I could feel the game changing from passive-aggressive family cruelty into something more predatory, the kind where smiling people start asking for a quick favor so they can build a chain around your ankle. And I've learned something the hard way. When a person who profits from desperation says, "Just curious," what they really mean is, "I'm measuring how easy you are to manipulate." I set my phone down face up this time, so I could watch the screen light up like a warning signal, and I opened my laptop and did the most unglamorous but powerful thing a person can do in a messy family situation. I got organized, like forensic organized, because emotion is loud but paperwork wins in court. First, I created a folder called Receipts, and inside it I made subfolders by category, loan, deed, texts, timeline, medical. And then I built a timeline document with exact dates and times starting from Thanksgiving night, the gift moment, the kitchen whispering about the cruise, Grandma June's silent instruction to call Thomas Reed, the discovery of the loan documents on Dad's desk, the coffee shop meeting with Aunt Denise, and now this brand new text from Trent asking for a photo of the ticket. And as I typed it out, I felt my brain settle. Because chaos is how people like my mother operate. They want everything foggy so they can rewrite it later. And clarity is the one thing they can't charm their way out of. I called Thomas Reed's office again and told his assistant I needed the earliest slot Monday morning, not afternoon, morning. And when she offered me 10:30 a.m., I said yes and then asked what I should bring, and she listed it like she'd done this 1,000 times. The ticket, the photos, any messages from family asking about it, and a government ID. Then she added almost casually, "And please don't bring anyone with you." which sent a little chill through me because it confirmed what I already felt. They expected my family to try to insert themselves. I didn't sleep well that night, not because I was fantasizing about revenge, but because my mind kept rehearsing the exact ways they could come at me. The way my mother could suddenly turn sweet. The way Dad could show up with that tired voice that says, "Let's be reasonable." The way Brooke could cry. The way Trent could threaten. And the most dangerous part was that I knew how each one of those tactics felt on my nervous system, because I'd been trained my whole life to respond to them like a dog hearing a whistle. In the morning, I did something else that felt boring but was actually life-saving. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus, changed my banking passwords, enabled 2-factor authentication, and asked my bank to add a verbal passphrase to my account. Because if my mother was bold enough to publicly humiliate me at Thanksgiving, she was bold enough to call a bank and pretend to be me, and I wasn't going to be the woman who loses millions because her mother is convincing on the phone. Then I drove to the nursing home to see Grandma June, and the place smelled like antiseptic and microwaved vegetables and those fake floral sprays they used to hide the fact that old age is not pretty. And when I walked into her room, she looked small but not soft. Her eyes were still sharp, still the kind of eyes that notice who avoids eye contact. And she took my hand like she was checking for a pulse and said, "You called him?" Not as a question, as a fact, and I said, "Yes," and she nodded once like she'd been waiting years for that one syllable. I sat close and lowered my voice because there were always staff walking by and I didn't trust the walls. "Grandma, I found papers," I said. "They used your house," and she closed her eyes for a second, like she was feeling the betrayal physically. Then she opened them and said, "Patricia," my mother's name out loud, tasting it like something bitter. She always wanted what wasn't hers, and I asked her to tell me everything she remembered about signing, and she described it in fragments. A hospital room too bright, her mouth dry, someone telling her she needed to sign for insurance, someone placing a pen in her hand shaking, and then my mother's voice, soothing and impatient at the same time. "Just sign, Mama. We'll handle it." And Grandma June said, "I didn't understand." And the quiet rage that rose in me in that moment wasn't the loud kind. It was the controlled kind, the kind that makes you careful because they didn't just disrespect her. They exploited her vulnerability, and in my mind that crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I asked the nurse for Grandma's medication and hospitalization dates, politely, like a normal granddaughter, and the nurse gave me the general timeline and told me I'd need formal authorization for records, and I smiled and said, "That's fine," because Thomas Reed would handle that with paperwork. But hearing it confirmed out loud made me feel sick in a new way, like the betrayal had texture now, like it had a smell. As I was leaving, Grandma June squeezed my hand and said, "They're going to come for you." And I paused and she added, "Not because they love you, because they think you're a door." And that sentence sat in my chest the whole drive home, because it described my entire role in that family. I wasn't a daughter. I was an access point. Sunday night, my mother called 3 times in a row, and when I didn't answer, she left a voicemail with that syrupy voice she uses when she's trying to sound like a victim. "Honey, I'm worried. You're acting strange. Please call me. Your father is stressed." And then she followed it with a text. "Don't be dramatic. If you have news, we should talk as a family." The word dramatic is their favorite leash because it puts you on defense. It tries to make you prove you're sane, and I refused to step into that trap, so I didn't reply. I just saved the message to my folder. Monday morning, I walked into Thomas Reed's office with my lockbox in my bag and my spine straight, even though my stomach was doing that flip thing, and his office looked like every serious lawyer's office in movies: dark wood, framed diplomas, shelves of books, and a quiet that makes you lower your voice instinctively. He greeted me like a professional, not like a savior, and that mattered, because I didn't need pity, I needed strategy. He asked to see the ticket, and I handed it over like it was a fragile piece of evidence. And he didn't touch it with casual fingers. He put on gloves and slid it into a protective sleeve. Then he said, "Good." And it was the first time someone said "good" about something in my life without it being conditional on me pleasing my mother. Then we went through the photos, and he asked questions that felt oddly grounding. Where was this located? Who had access to the room? How long were you alone? Did anyone see you photographing? Because this is what reality looks like. Not dramatic speeches, but precise details. When I showed him the clause with my name listed as a related party, his face tightened and he said, "That's not automatically enforceable, but it's a signal." And I said, "A signal of what?" And he leaned back and said, "A signal that someone has already thought about how to transfer pressure onto you." And hearing it from a lawyer made it colder and more real, like my suspicions had just been stamped. He laid out the plan in steps, and I'm telling you this because if you've ever dealt with family betrayal, it helps to hear what a clean plan sounds like. First, he said, we will form an LLC and a trust structure, so the claim can be made without your name on day one. Second, we will secure the ticket and verify it officially. Third, we will file an emergency challenge regarding the deed and request medical records to support incapacity at signing. Fourth, we will send a formal notice to the lender and to Trent that any attempt to enforce the collateral is disputed. And fifth, we will instruct you not to communicate with your family about the ticket, the documents, or the house, because anything you say can be twisted into permission. I asked him, "What if they come to my house?" And he didn't act dramatic. He just said, "Then you don't open the door." And I laughed once, short and humorless, because it's wild how hard it is to accept you can simply not open the door to your own parents. And he said, "Ms. Carson, your safety matters more than their feelings." And it hit me that I'd never heard an adult say that about me before. As I was leaving, he stopped me and said, "One more thing." And I turned and he said, "Your Aunt Denise needs to be careful." And I asked, "Why?" And he said, "Because whistleblowers and families become targets." And I nodded because I already knew. My mother doesn't forgive disloyalty. She punishes it publicly. When I got back to my car, my phone had 12 missed calls, and the newest text was from Brooke, my sister, and it said, "Lila, please call me. Mom says you're hiding something and Trent is freaking out." And I stared at that message and felt something complicated, because Brooke wasn't the mastermind. She was the product, but she was still participating, and I had to decide whether I was going to treat her like an enemy or like a person who might still be salvageable. I typed a single reply, "I'm fine. I'm busy. Talk later." And I immediately regretted even that, because later is a rope, but I needed her calm, not panicked, because panicked people run to the nearest manipulator, and my sister's nearest manipulator was my mother. That evening, I got a message from an unknown number that made my blood run cold, not because it was threatening, but because it was polite in a way that felt rehearsed. "Hi, Lila. This is Pastor Glenn from your mother's church. She asked me to reach out. She's worried about you. Please call me when you can." That's when I realized my mother wasn't just calling. She was building a net, using community, using authority, using shame, because if she couldn't pull me back with love, she'd pull me back with optics. And then, right as I was processing that, another text came in from Trent, shorter this time, no smile, no, just curious, just pressure. "Send the photo tonight. Don't make this weird." And I sat there in my quiet apartment, listening to the refrigerator hum, looking at my phone like it was a live wire, and I understood exactly what was coming next, because when a predator says, "Don't make this weird," what they mean is, I'm about to make it dangerous. And the worst part was I could already see the shape of my mother's next move, because if Trent was escalating and the pastor was involved, it meant my family had decided I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a resource they needed to capture before I slipped out of their hands for good. I didn't reply to Trent, and I didn't call the pastor back either, because when people start sending friendly messengers into your life, that is not concern, that is containment. And I needed one clear night to make moves before they could get to my job, my neighbors, my bank, or worse, my grandmother. I walked into my kitchen like I was about to cook dinner, but instead I turned it into a command center, laptop open, receipts folder ready, notebook out, and I did the thing most people never do when they're overwhelmed. I decided the next 24 hours would be run like a playbook, not like a panic attack. First move, I called Aunt Denise and didn't even ease into it with small talk because time was a luxury I didn't have. Denise, listen to me. Mom is looping in the church and Trent is pressing me for proof. If anyone contacts you asking questions, you say nothing, you forward it to Thomas Reed. You do not argue. You do not explain. You do not clear things up. You say speak to counsel and you hang up. And Denise went quiet for a second, like she was realizing the same thing I was, that this wasn't just family drama anymore. It was a coordinated squeeze. Then she whispered, "She called me already," and my stomach tightened. What did she say? And Denise exhaled. She said, "You've been acting unstable, and she's worried you're being taken advantage of by some man at work. She asked if I knew where you lived." And the way my skin crawled in that moment was physical, because Patricia doesn't just lie. She builds stories that make her look like the hero while she's quietly cutting off your exits. I told Denise, "Do not give her anything, not your thoughts, not your sympathy, not your address, nothing." And Denise said, "I didn't," but her voice sounded scared, and that scared me more than the lies, because scared people crack. Second move, I emailed my HR department from my work account with a simple, calm request that looked boring on the surface, but did exactly what I needed. I asked them to flag my file with a privacy note and to direct any external calls or inquiries about me to voicemail, and then to me. Not to reception chit-chat, not to a well-meaning coworker, me. I didn't accuse anyone, I didn't mention lottery, I just wrote, "I'm dealing with a personal matter involving extended family, and I'd like to keep my personal information protected, because you'd be shocked how quickly a manipulative parent can get a phone number or a schedule by sounding concerned." Third move, I called the nursing home and asked to speak with the administrator, not the front desk, and when I got her on the line, I used the firmest voice I own. "My grandmother June's care plan needs a security update. Effective immediately, no information is to be released to anyone who calls claiming to be family unless the caller uses the passcode I'm setting right now. And visits must be confirmed by a contact list that only includes me and attorney Thomas Reed." And the administrator paused like she was bracing for a fight. But when she heard my tone, she switched into professional mode and said, "That's reasonable. We can do that." And she asked for the passcode, and I gave her one that my mother could never guess because it was a private joke between me and Grandma June from when I was a kid, the kind of detail my mother never bothered to remember because it didn't serve her image. Then I did something that felt petty, but wasn't. I printed the screenshot of Trent's text and the pastor message and saved them to the receipts folder and wrote the date and time by hand on the printout like I was building a case, because I was. And while I was doing that, my phone rang again, a known number, and I watched it ring all the way to voicemail, and immediately the voicemail notification popped up, and I played it with the volume low, and it was my mother's voice, not sweet this time, clipped, controlled, angry in that way that tries to sound calm so she can later say she was reasonable. "Lila, I know you're seeing these messages. You don't get to ignore your family. You need to answer Trent. You need to answer me, and if you don't, I will come to your workplace tomorrow because I will not have my daughter out here acting like a stranger." And she added this small knife at the end. People are starting to ask questions, which is her favorite threat, not because she cares about questions, but because she knows I was raised to fear embarrassment. I stared at the wall for a full 10 seconds, and I didn't cry, I didn't shout. I just felt my body go cold, because now she'd said it out loud. She was willing to show up and cause a scene, and if you've ever had a parent like that, you know they don't show up for your birthdays, they show up for your boundaries. I texted Thomas Reed a screenshot of the voicemail transcription and wrote one sentence. She threatened to come to my workplace tomorrow, and he replied fast, "Do not engage, we'll handle it." And just seeing we calmed my nervous system. Because when you've been the family scapegoat, you get used to fighting alone. And having one competent ally feels like breathing after being underwater. Then I did the next hard thing. I blocked Pastor Glenn's number. Not because pastors are villains, but because my mother was using him as a lever, and I wasn't going to give her a lever. Right as I set my phone down, Brooke FaceTimed me, and the second her face popped on screen, I could tell she'd been crying, but not because she felt guilty. Because she was stressed. "Lila, please," she started, and her voice was thin. Like she'd been rehearsing lines. "Mom says you're hiding something and Trent thinks you're trying to embarrass us. Can you just send the picture and we'll all calm down?" And I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I just said, "Brooke, why do you need a picture of a ticket?" And she blinked fast and said, "Because it's family, because we need to know what's going on." And I held her gaze through the screen and said, "No, you need to know what you can take." And Brooke's face hardened for half a second, and then she snapped, "That's not fair." And I said, "Fair is not giving your sister a $2 joke while you get a $13,000 cruise and letting everyone laugh." And Brooke's mouth opened like she was about to argue, then closed, because she didn't have a defense that wasn't ugly. She tried a new tactic, softer. "Mom is worried about Grandma." And that was the one line I wasn't going to let slide. Mom is not worried about Grandma. Mom used Grandma's medicated signature to collateralize her house. And if you didn't know that, then congratulations, you're not the mastermind, you're just the accomplice. And Brooke's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" And I could hear someone in the background of her call, a muffled male voice, "Trent." And Brooke turned slightly like she was listening to him coach her. And that's when I knew the call wasn't private. It was a staged interrogation. I said, "Brooke, are you alone?" And she hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "Put Mom on," she said suddenly, like she was passing the baton, and I shook my head slowly. "No," I said, "you're not going to bounce me between handlers like I'm customer service." And Brooke's face went red. "Stop talking like that." And I leaned closer to the camera and lowered my voice. "Then stop acting like that." And I added, "Tell Trent to stop calling me. Tell Mom to stop threatening my job. And tell Dad to stop pretending he doesn't know what he signed, because I have the paperwork and so does my lawyer." And Brooke's expression changed at the word lawyer, because people like my family love power until the second they realize there are rules they can't charm their way around. She whispered, "You got a lawyer?" And I said, "Yes." And then I paused and asked the question that matters. "Brooke, do you want to know the truth, or do you want to protect Mom?" And she looked down, and for the first time she looked like a kid again, not the golden child, just a girl who'd spent her whole life doing whatever kept Patricia happy. In the background, Trent's voice got louder. "Tell her to show it." And Brooke flinched like that voice had more authority than mine, and that was my final confirmation that this wasn't about sisterhood. It was about control. I ended the call without a speech, because every extra sentence is something they can twist. 5 minutes later, my doorbell rang, and my whole body snapped to attention because no one should have known where I lived. And when I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped so hard it felt like gravity doubled. Because standing in the hallway, holding a grocery store bouquet like she was auditioning for innocence, was my mother Patricia, and behind her, slightly off to the side, was Trent, hands in his pockets, smiling like this was already settled, like I was already cornered. And Patricia leaned close to the door and said through the wood, sweet and dangerous at the same time, "Lila, open up. We just want to talk, and don't make a scene. The neighbors can hear everything." I didn't open the door, not because I was scared of my own mother, but because I knew exactly what she wanted the second she said, "The neighbors can hear everything." And that was leverage, the threat of embarrassment, the same tool she's used my whole life to keep me obedient. So I stayed silent for 3 full beats, the kind of silence that makes manipulative people itch. And then I spoke through the door in a calm voice that didn't match the adrenaline in my chest. Patricia, you need to leave. And she laughed softly like I'd told a cute joke. Lila, don't be dramatic, we're family. And Trent chimed in, too smooth, too casual. We just want to clear this up. You're making it worse by hiding. And I pressed my forehead against the door for a second and had this neurotic flash of my 8-year-old self in church shoes, being told to smile no matter what. And I thought, not today. I stepped back, picked up my phone, and hit record, not pointing it at the door like some wannabe influencer, just recording audio because I wanted timestamps and proof. And then I spoke again. Patricia, you threatened to come to my workplace. Now you're at my home. If you do not leave, I will call the police. And her tone changed immediately. That syrup hardened into steel. Police, Lila, are you serious after everything I've done for you? And I almost laughed because that line is universal. It's the same line every parent like this uses. The invisible ledger where they count feeding you as a favor and not the minimum requirement of parenting. She leaned closer, voice rising just enough to be heard. Open the door. I brought flowers. I'm trying to be kind. And I said, those flowers are not kindness. They're a prop. And then I heard her inhale sharply. The offended gasp. The one that means she's about to escalate to a performance. Trent tried a new angle. Quieter. Like he was the reasonable man in the room. Lila, you're spiraling. Let's talk inside. I'll mediate. And I felt my skin crawl again because mediators like Trent only show up when there's something valuable to mediate you out of. I walked to my kitchen window, peeked through the blinds at the hallway through the peephole angle, and realized something that made my stomach sink and my brain get weirdly sharp. They weren't alone. Not exactly, because down the corridor by the stairwell, pretending to check her phone, was Brooke. And the sight of her standing there like backup, like an accessory to intimidation, hit me harder than my mother's voice, because it meant they'd coordinated this. They'd planned the timing, the flowers, the don't make a scene line, all of it. I went back to the door, kept my voice steady and said, Brooke, I see you. And there was a tiny shuffling sound like she hadn't expected me to notice. And then Patricia snapped, don't drag your sister into this, which was hilarious because she'd literally dragged her sister into this by bringing her to my hallway, like a witness. I opened my phone and dialed Thomas Reed, speaker on low, and he answered quickly, Lila. And I said, they're at my door, Patricia, Trent, and Brooke. And I didn't even finish the sentence before Patricia started talking louder, trying to hijack the narrative. Thomas, this is Patricia, her mother. She's confused. She's being influenced. And Thomas didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He just said, Miss Hale, this is counsel. You are not to contact my client directly. You are trespassing. Leave immediately. And Patricia's laugh turned ugly. Trespassing on my daughter. And Thomas replied, this is not a discussion. Leave, or law enforcement will be called, and any further contact will be documented. And that word documented landed like a slap because it's the one thing she hates, paper trails. Trent tried to interrupt. Sir, we're not threatening, we're just concerned. And Thomas said, then show your concern by leaving. And silence followed, not because they agreed, but because they were recalculating the cost of staying. Patricia switched tactics again, her voice suddenly soft, almost trembling, the voice she uses when she wants people to think she's the wounded party. Lila, please, just open the door. I'm worried about you. You're acting like you have something to hide. And I said, I do have something to protect. And she immediately jumped. The ticket. And that right there was the tell, because she couldn't help herself. The mask slipped for half a second. The hunger showed, and I felt this cold clarity settle over me. This isn't about love. This is about access. I said, Patricia, you will leave or I call the police, and she hissed. Do it, call them. Tell them you're locking out your own mother. Tell them you're holding money you don't deserve. and my hands tightened around my phone because that was the oldest poison in our family. The belief that my worth is conditional, earned, and revocable, I said calmly. I'm calling now. And I dialed, and the second I did, Brooke finally stepped forward and said my name like a warning. Lila, stop. And I didn't even look through the peephole this time. I just said, Brooke, you brought them here. You don't get to tell me to stop. And Brooke's voice cracked. Mom said you were going to run off. She said you were going to abandon Grandma. And that made my blood boil because it was so backwards, it was almost impressive. Your mother used Grandma's medicated signature to put her house at risk. I said, I'm the only one who updated security at the nursing home. I'm the only one who got a lawyer, so don't say her name like a weapon. And that shut Brooke up because deep down she knew I wasn't lying. She just didn't want to admit what it meant. The dispatcher answered and I gave my address and said, there are people outside my apartment refusing to leave. And I kept it simple because oversharing is how you get dismissed. And then I ended the call and went back to recording. Patricia's tone changed again, now furious but controlled. You're going to regret this. And I said, no, you are. And I meant it, because the regret always belongs to the person who tries to control someone who's finally done being controlled. Trent leaned close to the door, voice low like a threat wrapped in a smile. You can't hide forever. You think money makes you untouchable. It doesn't. And I felt the hairs rise on my arms because that wasn't a family comment. That was a predator comment, and I filed it away in my mind as something to tell Thomas word for word. Then Patricia did what she always does when she realizes she's losing. She went for shame. She raised her voice slightly and said, neighbors, I'm sorry, my daughter is having an episode. And I saw it. I saw the performance forming, the plan to make me look unstable so they could later say they were just trying to help. And my stomach dropped because this is the kind of move that can get you put in a box you can't easily climb out of. So I responded with a pattern interrupt. I opened my door, but only with a chain on, just enough for my voice to carry and for them to see my face calm, steady. Not a woman having an episode, just a woman done with games. And I held my phone up plainly so they could see the red recording, and I said clearly, Patricia, Trent, Brooke, you are being recorded. You've been asked to leave. The police are on the way. And the way Patricia's eyes flicked to the phone told me everything. She hates witnesses. Brooke's face went pale, and Trent's smile faltered for the first time. You're recording your own mother. Patricia spit, and I said, you're threatening your own daughter. And then I did the one thing that made the hallway go dead quiet. I said, you can stop pretending this is about love. You're here because you think I won the lottery, and you're panicking because I didn't run to you like a child. And Patricia's mouth opened, closed, and then she snapped, how dare you? But she didn't deny it, and that silence was the loudest confession. Brooke whispered, Mom, is that true? And Patricia whipped her head, sharp, don't be stupid. And Brooke flinched, and I watched it all like I was watching a documentary about a family I used to belong to. And then the elevator dinged, and for 1 second I thought it was the police, but it wasn't. It was a man in a uniform holding a clipboard, building management, and he looked confused. Is everything okay? He asked, and Patricia instantly turned on her charm. Oh yes, dear, just a family misunderstanding. And I said, no, it's not okay. I've asked them to leave. And the man looked at my phone, looked at the chain, looked at their faces, and you could see him decide he didn't want to be involved, but he also didn't want trouble in the building, and he said, ma'am, if she wants you to leave, you should leave. And Patricia's face tightened because she hates being corrected by anyone she can't control. Then, faint but unmistakable, I heard sirens, and Patricia's confidence wobbled, and she leaned in closer to the crack of the door and hissed so only I could hear, if you embarrass me like this, I will burn your life down. And my heart thudded hard, not from fear, from rage, because that right there was the truth. She wasn't here to reconcile. She was here to intimidate. I looked her straight in the eye through that narrow gap and said softly, "You already tried." And then I heard the footsteps in the stairwell, heavy, official, and the siren stopped outside. And Patricia took one quick step back like she'd just remembered the world's rules. And Trent's posture changed from confident to cautious, and Brooke looked like she might cry. And as the officers rounded the corner and asked, "What's going on here?" Patricia put on her best wounded smile and opened her mouth to speak. And I realized in that exact second the next battle wasn't the hallway. It was the story. Because whoever controls what the police believe in the first 30 seconds controls everything. And Patricia has been rehearsing this role her whole life. The first officer stepped between us like a human divider, hand hovering near his belt but not aggressive, just ready, and he asked again, "What's going on?" And my mother didn't even flinch at the uniform. She flinched at the fact that her performance now had an official audience, and then she snapped into her soft voice, the one she uses in church foyers and PDA meetings. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. My daughter is having a breakdown. She's been acting irrational, locking me out, accusing us of things, and I'm just trying to check on her. And I swear to you," the speed at which she pivoted from threatening to victim was almost athletic, and the second officer looked at me, then at the chain on my door, then at my phone, and he said, "Ma'am, is that true?" And I kept my face calm because the fastest way to lose credibility is to sound like you're pleading for your own sanity. So I said, "No, officer. They came to my apartment after I told them not to contact me. They refused to leave, and I recorded it." And I held up the phone like a receipt, not like a weapon, and then Patricia scoffed. "She's recording her own mother. Doesn't that tell you something?" And the officer didn't bite. He just said, "Ma'am, people record disputes all the time." And then he looked at Trent and asked, "Sir, what's your relationship here?" And Trent tried to smile that controlled smile again. "I'm her brother-in-law, just here to support the family." And the officer nodded. Slowly, like he'd heard that exact line from someone who was about to cause problems, and then he asked Brooke, "And you?" And Brooke's voice came out small, "I'm her sister." And I watched Brooke's eyes flick to my phone and then away, like she couldn't decide whether to protect the truth or protect the family script. And then the officer said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. You all need to step away from the door." And Patricia protested immediately. "But she's unstable." And the officer held up his hand. "Ma'am, step away." And that was the first time in my entire life I saw my mother take a direct instruction and not immediately override it. And it wasn't because she respected him. It was because she respected consequences. And then the second officer turned to me. "Ma'am, can you open the door so we can speak?" And I felt my throat tighten because this is the part where people like my mother love to plant doubt. This is the part where a calm liar can paint you as hysterical. And I had this neurotic thought, like, what if they believe her? What if they see me as the problem because I'm the one with the chain and the recording and the boundary? And then I remembered Thomas's voice, document, be simple, be factual. So I opened the door with the chain still on and I said, "I can speak right here." And the officer nodded, and then I said, "I asked them to leave. I have an attorney. They were told not to contact me, and my mother just threatened me." And Patricia instantly gasped like I'd accused her of murder. "Threatened you?" I said. "I was worried about you." And I didn't argue. I didn't match her energy. I just tapped my screen. It's recorded, and that word hit the hallway like a gavel. And then the officer asked me, "Do you want them trespassed?" And my mother's eyes widened for a split second, not fear, outrage, because being removed by force would damage her image more than anything. And I said, "Yes, I want them to leave and not come back." And Patricia snapped, "This is insane. This is my child." And the officer said, "Ma'am, she's an adult. If she wants you to leave, you leave." And then Trent tried a softer angle. "Officer, we're just trying to resolve a family misunderstanding." And the officer didn't even look at him. He looked at Patricia and said, "Ma'am, You need to step back and start walking now." And then my mother did something I did not expect. She turned her head slightly toward Brooke and whispered something. And Brooke's face changed, like she'd just been handed an instruction she hated. And Brooke took a small step toward the officer and said, "Can I talk to my sister for 1 second?" And my chest tightened because I knew exactly what that was. It was the last attempt to pull me into a private guilt conversation, and I said, "No." Flat, clean, no explanation, because explanations are invitations. And then Brooke's eyes filled, and she said, "Lila, please." And the officer gently stepped between us again and said, "Not right now." And then Patricia's voice sharpened. "See, she's isolating herself. That's not normal." And I said, "No. What's not normal is showing up at someone's home to pressure them." And the officer looked at me with the slightest nod, like he appreciated that I was staying grounded. And then he told them, "You can leave voluntarily, or you can be escorted out." And Patricia's face went rigid, and she forced a laugh. "Escorted? Like I'm a criminal?" And the officer replied, "Right now you're trespassing." And that's when the hallway got quiet in a different way, because my mother had always acted like rules were for other people, and now 2 people with badges were telling her the rules applied to her too. And then she did her last little jab, leaning toward me with this tight smile, voice low, "You're going to regret treating your family like strangers." And I said, "You treated me like a stranger first." And then, finally, she turned, grabbed the flowers that had been sitting on the floor like a sad prop, and she walked toward the elevator with Trent close behind and Brooke trailing, wiping her face with the back of her hand like she was the one being punished. And the officers waited until the elevator door swallowed them, and then one officer said, "Do you have a restraining order?" And I said, "Not yet." And he nodded. "If they come back, call again. Keep the recordings, and if you feel threatened, consider a protective order." And I thanked him. And then I closed the door and slid the deadbolt like my body finally remembered how to breathe. And the second the lock clicked, my knees went weak, not in a dramatic fainting way, in that delayed adrenaline crash way. And I walked to my kitchen, set my phone down, and stared at my hands because they were shaking like I'd just jumped off a bridge. And then my phone buzzed again, and my stomach dropped because I thought it would be my mother, but it wasn't. It was a voicemail from an unknown number, and the transcription preview popped up on the screen before I even pressed play, and it said, "Lila, it's Dad. Don't ignore this. Your mother is losing it, and we need to talk about Grace's house." And the mention of Grace made my throat tighten because this whole thing was never just about me. It was about my grandmother, the only person who ever saw me without pricing me. And then my mind replayed what I'd seen in those papers, the signature, the dates, the predatory interest, and I realized the hallway confrontation wasn't random, it was timed, because the second my mother suspected I had money, the first thing she would try to do is secure her escape route, and the only escape route she cared about was the house. And then I got a text from Thomas that made my blood go cold. Just 5 words, "They filed something this morning." And I stared at the screen, reread it, and my brain did that quiet, efficient thing again, like it was switching into survival mode, and I typed back, "What did they file?" And Thomas responded, "Emergency petition, claiming you're exploiting Grace." And I felt my mouth go dry. Because this is the oldest trick in the family playbook, accuse the scapegoat of what the golden ones are actually doing. And then I thought about the officers, and how my mother tried to label me unstable, and it clicked. She was building a record, a narrative, a paper trail to make herself look like the concerned mother, and me look like the dangerous daughter. And then my phone buzzed again, and this time it was Brooke, a single message. "Mom said if you don't fix this, she'll tell everyone what you did." And I almost laughed because what I did was call the police when people refused to leave my door. But in my mother's world, boundaries are crimes. And then, right as I was about to block Brooke, another text came in from a number I didn't recognize, and it was a photo, grainy, taken from inside a car, of Grandma Grace sitting in her nursing home room by the window, and below it one sentence that made my stomach flip. You have 48 hours to cooperate, or you'll never see her alone again. And I stood there in my kitchen staring at that message, feeling something ancient and ugly rise up. Not fear, not even sadness, but this clean rage, because now they weren't just coming for money. They were coming for the one person I was protecting, and that's the moment I stopped thinking of this as family drama and started thinking of it as war with paperwork, and I picked up my phone, called Thomas back immediately, and said, "No more playing nice, tell me exactly what we do next. Step by step, because if they think they can use Grace like a hostage, they have no idea who they just woke up." I wish I could tell you I slept after that text, that I took a deep breath, drank some tea, and woke up feeling centered and mature, but no, I paced my apartment like a caged animal, because when someone threatens access to the one person you're protecting, your body doesn't do calm, it does math, and the first thing I did was screenshot everything, the photo, the threat, the timestamp, and then I forwarded it to Thomas and said, "This is coercion, this is harassment, this is proof." And he replied almost instantly, "Do not respond to them directly. We move fast, we document, and we meet at 8 a.m. And then my phone started buzzing again, voicemail after voicemail, and I didn't play them because I already knew the soundtrack. Guilt, blame, fake concern, and then a new message came from Trent, just one line. "You're making this worse, Lila. You don't understand what you're doing." And I stared at it and actually smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. The people who set the fire always get furious when you grab water instead of apologizing for being burned. And then I did something I should have done years ago. I wrote down a clean timeline on a legal pad, not emotional, just facts: Thanksgiving public humiliation, discovery of the loan, discovery of the deed transfer, call to Thomas, trust documents, medical record timeline, family showing up at my door, police involvement, emergency petition filed, coercive text about Grace, and I realized the story they were trying to sell wasn't just Lila is difficult, it was Lila is dangerous. Because if they could frame me as unstable, they could block me from Grace, and if they could block me from Grace, they could move money and signatures and property without anyone questioning it. And then I thought about you watching this right now, because I know a lot of you have lived some version of this, and I need you to answer me honestly. If your own family tried to paint you as the villain, the moment you set a boundary, would you still keep the boundary, or would you fold to keep the peace? Because that question is the whole spine of this story. And then I did the next smartest thing. I called the nursing home directly, asked for the director of nursing, and I said, "My name is Lila Mercer. I am Grace Mitchell's granddaughter. I am her emergency contact, and effective immediately, I need a note placed in her file. No unsupervised visits from anyone on this list." And I read the names slowly: Patricia, Gerald, Brooke, Trent, and I heard the woman pause, like she was weighing whether she was allowed to do that, and I said, "I have an attorney, and if you need it in writing, you'll have it within the hour." And she softened. "We can put an alert, ma'am, but you may need legal documentation for a full restriction." And I said, "You'll have it." And then I hung up and my hands were shaking again, not from fear, from velocity. Because once you start protecting someone for real, you realize how many systems depend on you being passive. And then I drove to Thomas's office before the sun was fully up, because I couldn't sit still in my own home with that threat in the air. And when I walked in, Thomas was already standing, jacket on, folder thick enough to be a weapon, and he said, "They filed the petition claiming you're financially exploiting Grace and isolating her." And I said, "Of course they did." And he nodded. "We respond with evidence. We request an expedited hearing, and we file our own protective petition citing harassment, coercion, and the suspicious deed transfer." And then he slid a printout across the desk, and there it was, the emergency petition with my mother's name stamped at the bottom like she was proud of it. And reading it was like watching someone paint you as a monster with a straight face. It said I was manipulating Grace, influencing her decisions, restricting family contact, and I laughed one bitter laugh and said, "So when they do it, it's care. When I do it, it's control." And Thomas didn't smile. He just said, "Exactly, and judges see this a lot, which is why we win with details." And then we built the response like a brick wall. Screenshots of the group chat humiliation from Thanksgiving, the predatory loan documents, the timeline of Grace's hospitalization and medication, the shaky signature, the records showing I was the one visiting regularly, the call log showing. My family only started contacting me aggressively after the lottery news surfaced, the police incident number from the hallway, and finally the threat text with Grace's photo, and Thomas circled it with his pen and said, "This is where their story breaks." And I felt my chest loosen for the first time in days because there's something about seeing chaos turned into evidence that makes you feel less crazy. And then Thomas looked at me and said, "Now we decide how hard we press." And I said, "Hard," because I wasn't doing the gentle version anymore. The gentle version gets you used, and then we went straight to court filings, and I want you to picture this. Not glamorous, no dramatic music, just fluorescent lighting and tired people in suits carrying stacks of paper. But every page was power because every page was a boundary made official. And by noon we had a temporary protective order request filed against Patricia and Trent for harassment and intimidation, and we had an emergency motion to appoint an independent advocate for Grace, because if anyone should speak for her, it should not be the people who used her house as collateral while she was drugged and in pain. And then the twist I didn't expect happened. The clerk recognized the name Mitchell and said quietly, "Grace Mitchell, the one from Maple Street." And Thomas nodded, and the clerk's face changed just a little, like she'd seen this family before, and she said, "I'll flag it for priority." And that's when I realized my mother's reputation might not be as spotless as she thinks, because small towns keep receipts even when people pretend they don't. And then, that afternoon, my phone rang again, and this time it was the nursing home director, and her voice was careful. "Ms. Mercer, your family is here insisting on seeing Ms. Mitchell. They're saying you're keeping her from them." And I said, "Do not let them in. I'm sending you a letter from my attorney right now." And the director said, "They're causing a scene." And I said, "Call security, and if they refuse to leave, call the police. I already have an incident number." And I could hear murmuring in the background, my mother's voice rising, and I felt that same rage, but it was cleaner now, not panicked, because I finally had something my mother hates, an authority she couldn't charm. And then I got in my car and drove there myself with Thomas's letter printed and signed. And when I walked into that nursing home lobby, there they were. Patricia in her best concerned daughter outfit, pearls and outrage, Trent standing a little behind her like a guard dog in a blazer, Brooke hovering near the chairs like she didn't want to be seen, and my mother saw me and her face lit up, not with love, with possession. "There she is," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Lila, stop this, you're scaring everyone." And I said, "Good." And the receptionist's eyes widened because people aren't used to the scapegoat speaking in full sentences, and my mother's smile cracked. "Excuse me." And I held up the letter. "This facility has been informed that you are not permitted unsupervised access to Grace Mitchell due to ongoing legal action and documented harassment." And Trent stepped forward, voice low. "You can't do this." And I said, "Watch me." And the director came out and took the letter and nodded, and then she said, "Mr. and Mrs. Hale, you need to leave." And my mother's voice went sharp. "I'm her daughter." And the director replied, "And she has rights, and we have policies, and right now you're disrupting the facility." And my mother turned to me with pure venom. "If your grandmother's health declines, that's on you." And I leaned closer and said quietly so only she could hear, "If anything happens to Grace because you stressed her, I will bury you in court. And I don't mean physically, I mean legally, financially, socially, every way people like my mother fear." And for the first time, Patricia looked uncertain, because bullies rely on you being afraid of looking rude, and I was past that. And then Brooke finally spoke, tears in her eyes. "Lila, please, this is too much." And I looked at her and said, "Too much was laughing at me. Too much was using Grandma's house. Too much was threatening access to her like she's a bargaining chip. And Brooke flinched because truth hits harder than yelling, and then security arrived. And my mother did the one thing she never does in public. She lost control, she shouted. She won money, and now she thinks she's better than us. And I didn't even blink. I said, "No, I learned I was always better than what you gave me." And there was this silence, the kind that makes people stare at the floor because they don't want to witness a family's mask fall off, and security escorted them out. And as the automatic doors closed behind them, I felt this weird mix of relief and grief. Because winning isn't always a celebration. Sometimes it's just the end of pretending. And then I went upstairs to Grace's room, and she was sitting by the window like always, small but sharp-eyed. And when she saw me, she said, "They came," and I said, "They did." And she reached for my hand and squeezed it, and her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Don't let them take this house." And I said, "They won't." And then she surprised me. She said, "They always wanted your spirit broken, not your money." And I swallowed hard because she was right. This was never about a cruise or a lottery ticket. It was about control. And then I sat there with her, listening to the quiet hum of the building, and I realized something that might help you too. Family loyalty is not a blank check for disrespect, and love is not proven by how much humiliation you can tolerate. And if you're watching this and you've ever been the easy one because you don't fight back, I need you to hear me. You were never easy. You were trained. And then my phone buzzed with a new message. From Thomas. Hearing granted. 9 a.m. tomorrow. And my stomach flipped because now it was official, and I looked at Grace and said, "Tomorrow we put it on record." And she nodded like a general approving a plan. And as I left her room, I passed a mirror in the hallway, and I barely recognized my own face. Not because of the money, because of the posture. I finally looked like someone who believed herself, and then my phone buzzed again, and this one made my blood run cold, because it was from an unknown number, a photo of my apartment. Building lobby, taken from across the street, and one sentence, "Court won't protect you everywhere." And I stood there in that nursing home hallway realizing the story was about to get darker, because when people like my mother start losing in court, they start trying to win in other ways. And I turned back toward Grace's room, and I made a decision that would change the next 24 hours completely. And I'm going to tell you what that decision was and what happened inside that courtroom and who finally cracked first. But before I do, I need you in the comments. Do you believe blood makes someone family no matter what? Or do you believe family is earned? Because what I'm about to describe next is the moment that questions stopped being philosophical and became survival. And if you think you know how this ends, trust me, you don't. Because the last person to walk into that courtroom the next morning was the one person my mother never expected to see on my side.